Hi, my name is Georg and welcome to a new episode of the Nomadic Business Insight.
I've been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better.
During this episode, we'll be talking about upcoming ventures and dreams. And as you know, in this podcast, I always intend to be as transparent and true to everything that is going on into our life. So, of course, when we're going through any sort of transition or change in terms of our own business life, that is something that I think is very interesting to many people. So here I am trying to share the most of what is currently happening.
You are listening to LD Podcast. Would you like to publish with us? Tell us your story at www.ld.studio/podcasts. Edited and published by LD Studio.
Hi, and thanks for tuning in. As always, it's a pleasure to do these episodes. It's really growing into my heart doing the Nomadic Business Insight podcast. And it's also time for reflection and just looking back and also into the future on what is currently going on. So in this episode, I'm gonna try to lay out some of the things happening in our life and also explain you a bit about the thought process behind of it. Of course, as always, you can leave comments on the episode on YouTube or Spotify. And Spotify is currently releasing this cool, very new feature where you can add a question live in the episode. So we'll try that for this episode. So you can also directly through Spotify go in and leave your comments, and we'll get back in touch on this episode too. As you can see, if you've been tuning in on video, I'm currently sitting in one of the most spectacular locations in Norway as my family and I, which means my wife and Sylvia and our daughter Sakira and our dog Lola, we've been hiking for over 3 weeks in the Norwegian mountains. As we currently are recording a Norwegian TV series and documentary project that is called The Golden Key, or in Norwegian, Gullnøkkelen. It's a project that we've been very passionate about for a long time, and we've been really awaiting this summer as the movie, or it's gonna be 3 seasons of a TV show, is all about visiting hundred of these Norwegian mountain cabins owned by the Norwegian Hiking Association. And we hope to be contributing in a positive way so that more young people know about these cabins and use them and go out in the mountains. I'll let you know a little bit more about it later in this episode. I also hope that you have been really enjoying the most recent episodes. The one episode we did with Axel about building CRM teams was a blast for me as well. I learned so much from him, and he's a really talented guy that we really look forward to working more with. And I'm sure we're gonna do more episodes. We've already been talking about lining from 3 to 4 more episodes for you guys. So I think that's gonna be some real value coming out of there. And yeah, the sun is shining outside. I just have this massive lake going down from outside the cabin. The cabin we're currently at is called Sandvasshytta, which translates as much as the sandy lake cabin. And it is truly a massive lake out here. It's almost like we're in a big basin in the mountains, surrounded by steep cliffs and high peaks. The last days we've been walking about, or the last weeks we've been walking about 250 kilometers from cabin to cabin. Some days we've had rest days, and today we're leaving a bit later as the morning has been filled with rain and storm. So it's been really nice sitting in the cabin and just watching the bad weather pass away. And it's currently around 1 o'clock here in Norway, and the forecast, at least as we've been told by people passing by, as we haven't had receptions for weeks, they told us that Around 2 and 3 o'clock, it will lighten up and the sun will come out. And as we only have a 6 kilometers hike today to the next cabin, we're taking it very slow. And it actually seems to be true. Looking out, it seems like it's clearing up. The sun is coming out. It is really stunning. I would really recommend everyone who has the chance to come here to Norway and check out the cabins of the Norwegian Hiking Association. I also wanted to let you know a little bit about the upcoming episodes that I intend to do here in the Nomadic Business Insight. We are gonna do 2 very exciting episodes with my wife and Sylvia that are gonna be about 2 different topics. One of them is gonna be about her wish to retire at 30 years old. I think that's quite a bold move. It's a bold statement, and I want to ask her a little bit more about what she means by it and how she intends to fulfill that dream. We're also going to do an episode about what has made us such a strong enterprise or business couple. I think that's quite interesting, as many people seek and need a business partner, a partner in crime. That person doesn't necessarily have to be your personal partner. Many people have great business partners that they are not in a relationship with, obviously. But I do think a lot of the qualities align outside of our personal relationship, and that is something that we intend to dive a bit into. After those 2 episodes, we want to do a trilogy on young leadership. As you probably know, I've been an owner of businesses and led people since the age of 18, 19, 20 years old. So I've had almost a decade behind me of working in leadership positions. And during that time, I've picked up quite a few learning experiences that I really want to share with you guys. It is everything about how to be a good or a bad leader, how to be respected and to be respectful. It's also a lot about ambiguity. So we're gonna do a trilogy there where we're gonna dive into different methods and different learning experiences I've had. And also I wanna let you guys know a bit more how mountaineering and my life outdoor has helped me become a better leader. After that trilogy, I'm gonna do one singular episode with 3 tips and tricks that gonna help you build networks on the road. As in one of our most recent episodes, we spoke about how network is one of the key methods for you to build a digital and independent income. We also obviously want to help you guys build your networks. And in that episode, we're going to deep dive into 3 different techniques that is going to make it much easier for you to come out of your bubble, meet new people, and make that valuable business connection. So as you might understand, there's a lot of looking forward to. There's many exciting episodes coming up, and we'll probably record quite a few of them on this hiking project, as the afternoons provide us with a lot of time to relax and reflect. We're mostly recording during the day, but that's during the hikes and also when we meet people on the cabins. And in the afternoons, we have time to sit and read, write, or record podcasts like I'm currently doing. And with that said, I think it's time to move into the topic of this episode, and that is my personal upcoming ventures and dreams. And this is obviously something that is a bit touchy to talk about because nobody ever knows what the future will bring. But I'm also a big fan of envisioning. I'm a big fan of manifestation theory. And for those of you who have done a bit of reading on that, I am by no means an expert, and I'm only learning about this myself. But what is fascinating is a lot of people believe that the stronger you envision and manifest somewhere you want to go, so that is both in thought, in speaking, and in thinking, you will automatically somehow head that direction. And that is a very important fact for me because I'm working with envisioning and manifestation theory for many years, and it actually in many ways turns out to work very well. Lots of the things that I was envisioning when I was 20, 21 years old has become true. It has happened, maybe not in the exact way as I was picturing it, but very close to, and often in a more natural and better way. So it definitely works, and it definitely has helped draw me in the directions I want to go. This episode is not going to be about manifestation theory in particular, and to speak in depth about such a topic, I really want to bring some of the experts that I know that know a lot more on this field than me. But I am going to talk about how envisioning currently works for me and what I am envisioning. So I'm going to split it into 4 quite defined segments. And that is the past, what we have done over the couple of last years to help you put you in place. We talked quite a bit about it in the episode that is called What Brought Us Where We Are Today, or What Brought Us So Far. Or I think it was called What We've Built So Far. So if you haven't listened to that, I recommend you go back and listen to that episode. But I'll refresh a bit on that in a couple of seconds. Then further on, I'm going to talk about the current visions happening. I'm going to talk about upcoming close future and upcoming distant future. So those are the 4 categories that we have: past, current, close future, and distant future. And as you might know, in the past, we've been building a quite successful communication agency here in Norway that has been growing steady and still is growing in a natural pace. We've also built thrift shops, we've built a foundation or an audiovisual academy for kids, and we've built a cleanup NGO. So there is a couple of projects left behind that are still growing, non-depending on us, and that is a way we intend to leave it, as I currently feel like I've been closing up those chapters a little bit for me. I am turning 30 in half a year, so we're currently in July 2024, and in January 2025 both me and Sylvia are turning 30 years old, and I was quite defined and clear on that. By the time I turn 30 years old, I want to have a strong change of direction in career. So the things we've built so far, those are things that I hold very dear, and I am very passionate about both leaving things behind in a way that they are stable and that they can work onwards without us being so involved. That is one of the most important things for me, being an entrepreneur, not leaving a sinking ship, but leaving strong fortress that actually can continue to grow without me. And I've always been a person that likes to drift into new directions. I like things to be challenging. So coming from media and communication industry, I always knew that this is not the main industry that I want to invest, capitalize, and work within, because looking at the main pillars of industries that influence the world around us, we're looking at transportation, food production, energy production, and innovation and technology. And media and communications are not really any of them. And as has always been important for me to contribute to something very valuable, not only profitable, it's been natural for me to seek a change of direction. So we're soon moving into current and close future. But just so you know that I'm coming from 10 years of building small scale but successful companies, and I'm now seeking a change of direction, investing the money we have saved into new directions. So as you might understand, this is a quite big transition in my personal life, and I could compare it in many ways, I believe, to if a person that has had normal jobs or a normal job for a long period and now intends to move into their own digital or physical venture. So that would feel like a big step. It would feel like leaving security. And in many ways, it feels like the same for me, because I'm leaving behind lots of the securities of things that I know are working. We are earning good money on them. And instead of sitting on that train myself and earning most possible money myself. I leave that train behind for others. And I am again jumping into high risk positions. So a lot of the feelings I currently have and go through are very similar to people that first time are moving into something completely new. And in that phase of transition, it is important for us to do something that we know will give very good profits. And as you have previously heard in episode 5, we've just recently bought a property in North Norway that we got hold of for a very cheap price, and we know that we can refurnish and reconstruct it in a way that we can sell it for very high profits. So in this phase of transition, actually our backbone of risking and investing in a completely new field will be house flipping. And believe it or not, in many ways for us, that is the most low risk way we could do it, because we are gonna live in a house that we've already paid off. So consequently, we're not gonna have any living costs. We're living in Norway where we have our electric car with free charging. We have a lot of agreements with people around us and ways to get hold of free food. And in that way, we're almost reducing our own spending to a net zero. On the other side, we still have companies that give us overhead and profits. And we also have a few properties that we rent out and give us profits. So we have a steady income, not a very high income, but a steady enough income to continuously grow our capital in a phase where we're not gonna do anything that's gonna give big turnovers. But in a couple of years of investing time in building that house, we're obviously gonna sit back with a quite high net profit. And in this phase, I am intending to set everything in line for my new business transition. So you're probably excited to hear what it is and what it's all about, and you're gonna hear about it in a couple of seconds. But before I intend to move into that topic, we have just recently received a couple of questions after we released the episode on us buying property in North Norway. A lot of people have written us on Instagram asking how we plan for such a move, if we know a lot about North Norway, Lofoten before, and also what kind of work do we do in the prep time before actually moving there. And those are very interesting questions, so I thought instead of doing our own episode on them, I wanted to take them up here today in this episode and give you guys a couple of answers on them. First of all, you're all right. We don't know very much about Lofoten. We've obviously been there a couple of times. We know some people who live there, but we, as an example, we bought the house without even visiting it. So there's a lot of this current state on the house we know very little about. And we intend to do a visit up there in September to map out everything that has to be done, do some really good 3D scans. And for those of you who don't know much about this, there are some amazing apps that can provide very detailed 3D renders and scans of buildings at a very low cost. So absolutely recommend to check out those. So that's what we intend to do first. And then during the last half year where we will be living in Ålesund, we intend to, so during fall 2024, we intend to work on the redesign concept, structuring out most of the details of how we want to construct this house and what we're going to do. Because in Norway, you actually need to seek approval from the local government for a lot of the change you're going to do to buildings. Even though you own the land and own the property, there could be local rules in terms of how the house can look, which colors you can choose, and also the size you can extend to. So that is certain directions we're preparing in, and that is things we can easily do from remote. And we're also using our team around us, which are some extremely talented people. We're lucky enough that we've built core companies where a lot of the people we work with can help us doing tasks. So also when we're moving into house flipping, as we mentioned earlier, we're already intending to do it a bit more at scale, a bit more in a business perspective. Instead of doing everything ourselves, we are using consultants in our current companies to work out things like finances, do the application works, and also things like sorting building equipment and building material. These are things that we're currently working on. One of the most interesting things, and something we're currently discussing and haven't decided yet on, is that we're intending to buy 1 or 2 shipping containers, station them in Ålesund, and then reconstruct them into own housing units and own storage units before moving up to North Norway. And that is, it really boils down to personal comfort. You know, we could go up there and probably within a week sort out a quite comfortable living space in that house. But as we know very little about the house, there are certain things that could block a lot of our process. And those are if piping systems are really bad or electricity systems are really bad in a way that could make a living a hassle. We rather intend to refurnish a shipping container into a small, cute, tiny house that has all the small luxuries that we're seeking in terms of living comfortable, and also having 1 shipping container as a storage unit, and then just shipping both of those units up to North Norway, station them in the garden and install them there, hook them up with electricity and water. And that way we can, within 1 or 2 days, have a really good living unit without having to be too concerned about the current status of the house. So I know this is a bit off topic in this episode, but I do think it can bring some ideas and value to people preparing for transitions and new processes in their lives, because as we're nomads, we're always moving around. And yes, we may have lower standards of comfort than most people, but we also have a kid now, we have a dog, we're turning 30, and we have certain requirements and expectations to not have to go through unnecessary stress in our life. So everything we can do to prepare a move more fluent, more suitable, more comfortable, we'll do it, you know. So we have nothing to rush for, and this is the first very important stage for us to move into a new chapter. Well, enough about North Norway and our house flipping concept there. Let's move into the close upcoming future. It might be a big surprise for you guys listening, but I am gonna start studying during this fall again. After a couple of years not being at universities, where after my main degree, I've moved into doing a couple of courses here and there, because I've always been completely in love with the environment of people around universities. But I've also been a big critic to the current state in our society, where it's almost enforced that every intellectual young person has to go to universities, because I do think it limits the freedom of thought and the freedom of expression to very many young people, in the way that they prioritize taking a course or a degree just to take a degree, instead of actually going out into the world and figuring out what they are passionate about, and then maybe afterwards covering a degree. And that is the way I've done it always. I've been out in the world, traveling, starting my own business, and then just afterwards taking several degrees. But as I said, I'm intending to go back to university, and this time I'm having gotten my spot in a bachelor degree in Bodø, which is one of the northern cities in Norway. Is a bachelor degree within autonomous marine food production. And this reveals a lot of the direction that I'm heading into as terms of my personal career. As I mentioned earlier, I am very passionate about food industry, and it is a field that I didn't see myself moving into as a teen, also not in my early 20s, but during a lot of our travels and a lot of the projects I've worked within, I've been becoming more and more aware of the very slow process and also underdevelopment in general in regards to food industries around the world. There's a lot of exciting thing happening, but there's also some major issues that have to be solved. And I won't dive too deep into these problems today. And there are also a lot of these fields which I'm just beyond knowledge. I just don't know enough. I'm just touching surface. So I want to invite other people into this podcast to help me speak about these topics. But summing it up in a very easy way, the world at a current stage is in a very old-fashioned way, farming most of the food we eat today from land covering farms. So we're using a lot of space, we're using a lot of the surface of the earth to produce very little amounts of food. While research shows that we are in a high need for strong and dense protein sources, and a lot of the market and people have been pushing for a vegetarian or plant-based change of direction. One thing is clear: we have to reduce our usage of red meat, of animal meat that uses a lot of water in the production processes. But there is a couple of things that are coming up in the different markets around the world that I do think are way closer to a future-proof solution. And among them being vertical farming, completely automated indoor farming. So we're talking about massive greenhouses that could be in all sorts of formats, but that are placed in locations in the world that have abundance of the things that you need: energy, clean water, etc. But then we're also looking at what kind of sort of animal proteins could be the proteins of the future. People have been talking about insects, and we've been lucky enough to be working with quite a few people looking into insects as that possible solution. Soya has obviously been a strong contender, but during the recent years, there has come one protein source that is beating all of them to the edge by quite high margins. And you might not believe it, but the answer is land-based fish farming. So currently in Norway, there is a big change in industry happening. Norway has for decades been obviously one of the biggest fishing nations in the world. But since the 80s and 90s, fish farming in our oceans has also become a massive industry. There are a couple of huge enterprises, among them being Salmar and Grieg Seafood, who have grown from literally nothing 30 years ago to one of the major companies in Norway in terms of revenue and profits. But fish farming in oceans, you might have seen it. They look kind of like rings placed out in the ocean with nets over, and under the water surface they have massive nets with tons and tons or thousands and thousands of fish. They run into a lot of sustainability issues, and one of them being that cluster fish obviously produce a lot of shit, to talk straight through the core. And that shit again pollutes the fjords, the ocean around it. So there's a lot of people critical to it, and there's actually a movement going on to reduce that activity in Norway. In the recent 5 years though, a lot of investment and equity funds have gone into the direction of starting land-based fish farming companies. And one of the big contenders in the market, Salmon Evolution, that actually comes from the region where we are from in Norway, has just last year in 2023 really had their first testing year. And despite only producing at a 40% capacity, I think you might have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean to remember that they took out 300,000 kilograms of salmon with only around 30 employees. And that are massive numbers, taking in consideration that they're also recycling 99% of the water resource they use from the ocean as they're pumping in ocean water, using it, taking it through a very complex filter system and then pumping it out again in the ocean. And that they are also having the fish very contained in a safe environment. Recent reports show that it might be twice or up to 3 times more climate positive than growing soya beans, and is also very space efficient. So salmon farming or fish farming, land-based in general, is obviously a super interesting industry. And I do think it is an industry that's just opening. A couple of weeks ago, before starting our hike here, we visited something called Ordal Aqua, which is also a land-based fish farming company that just recently started here close to Stavanger in a small village, and actually not based close to the ocean, more into a valley, building pipe systems down to the ocean. And so I believe seeing those different scenarios, that fish farming land-based could be something that could be done in literally any Norwegian village. And that is a market we intend to move into. So to break the news short to you, my close coming future consists of going back to uni in North Norway in Bodø, studying autonomous marine food production, which obviously involves land-based fish farming. And we've also bought property in North Norway where I intend to set up a couple of small fish tanks in our own property to start my own venture. Obviously, this is a market full of research, of innovation, of very high-tech solutions, and that this is not a market where you move into without any know-hows. And that is why I'm in a very humble way intend to enter in a self-owned way, instead of only investing money in land-based fish farming companies, which I also obviously do. I want to build up something from scratch because I want to know everything. I want to learn about technology. So that is something that I intend to share a lot about, but I also do think we're going to fail a lot. We're going to lose money. We're going to gain money, but slowly and steadily, I hope within the course of 2 to 4 years that I can grow from something very small in the garden to something more major in North Norway. So we'll see how it goes. I'm very excited to be at a time and place in the world where I can, with my own investments, choose that change of direction. And I can also combine it with studying. I can combine it with maintaining my old companies or my previous companies and moving into a completely new market on my own. And we'll see how it goes. Maybe I just keep it as a close, small venture for myself, or maybe I grow it into something major. For example, taking SalMar's history in Norway, the Witzøe family as an example. Their granddad, who started the company in the 1980s, he grew literally Norway's biggest fish enterprise worth billions of dollars from zero to where it is today within 30 years without any external investors. So everything is possible. And I am just currently envisioning it step by step. And before closing off this episode, we will go a bit back into the envisioning process of it all. Though just before that, I want to let you know briefly about my distant future. Where do I intend that this is going to bring me? Well, again, I cannot say what the future holds, but I do believe that this transition is our way into food industries, which is obviously a much higher stake asset and investment market than the media and communication industry, which mostly consists of soft skills and transferable technology and not very expensive assets. So we're moving into a more heavy lifting industry, that's for sure. I also am very passionate about vertical farming industry, and I do have some visions about how I believe the world should look like in 50 to 100 years in terms of food production. And I call it the world as a space bubble theory. And yes, I've just announced my own kind of food theory. I do intend to do an episode on it in the future. And again, this is in no way scientifically looked into. It just pretty much consists of my own learning, my own experience, and my own beliefs. So yes, I am launching my own concept, the world as a space bubble, and some of my closest friends have heard me talking about this a lot. It is a theory that I intend to research a lot and spend a lot of time developing more thoughts around. But I do have heard that in Japan they have a couple of universities that have courses directly aiming at this as food production in a way that could have been done interstellar, that can also be the solution for our world problems on our earth here. Closing off on that topic, how does envisioning help me in all of this? Well, looking at food production and land-based salmon farming, I think you gotta be quite nuts and also quite a big risk taker to think that you as a young person, 30 years old, can move into an industry that is dominated by massive intercontinental companies. But there has been a lot of entrepreneurs in this world before that have done similar things, that have breached markets and developed whole new things by themselves. As I've said, I've been building companies and teams more than 10 years. So the human perspective, I know that I'm capable of. Now, when it comes to the technology of it, those are things that I can learn. It is not rocket science. It is growing and keeping fish alive in a tank. So I just intend to do step by step, slowly moving into it. First step is obviously I'm envisioning myself having a space in North Norway. We have kind of closed off that chapter. Now it's obviously moving up there, developing that space, and I'm not trying to think too big about every step of the process. My first goal is to build up 2 small tanks. That's not the biggest kind of investment. That is something that I can do by myself. And then slowly by slowly visiting other companies doing the same, reading online, watching films, reading studies, asking professors at uni, I'll figure out step by step. The only thing I'm currently envisioning is that within 2 to 3 years, I want to have sold my first bigger batches of fish. And obviously fish is a very high profit product. So I think with that profits, I can easily reinvest. And during that journey, I will also have learned a lot about how to do it. And with that knowledge, with that new capital, I'm sure that I can convince people around me in the local community to help me build on this future. So I think in any step, in any direction, every dream you're going, you always have to, at one side, see the final goal as a dream, but then focus mostly on the next step. And don't stress yourself. There is nothing to run for. You have no pressure around you. The only pressure there is the one that you build up yourself in your own head. So you can really enjoy the whole journey and take it at the pace that you are happy with. Some of the most successful entrepreneurs are the ones that have adopted some sort of laissez-faire style. Those of you who know the business theorist laissez-faire know that his methodology was much about letting things happen by its own flow and let nature develop lots of the rhythms. And I am a firm believer in that theory, in terms of that there is nothing you have to run for. If you are unhappy during the process, chances are high that you at some place in that journey will stop or fail, whilst if you're happy along all the way, you'll continue all the way. And so my core motto is that I take the steps when I'm ready for them and I'm happy about to take them. And right now I feel happy about moving to North Norway. It feels like aligning well with my family, and things will happen by itself. Would I have wished to move into this industry earlier? Of course, I had these dreams when I was 25, 26 years old, and I was already then feeling like maybe I'm too late moving into that industry. But again, being here 30 years old, I feel like I'm still young enough to do it. And I do think that we're always in future contexts, we're thinking that we're too late, we're too slow moving. But then in retrospective, when we are growing older, we think, well, we could have done it when we were 40, we could have done it when we were 50, and people still keep on innovating when they're 70 and 80, so there's literally nothing to stop you at every point where you are in your journey. Well, I think that's it for this episode. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of exciting episodes coming out, and I hope you enjoy listening as much as I enjoy making these episodes. The concept of the world as a space bubble is something that I intend to do a lot of episodes on in the future, but we'll probably not start publishing those before around Christmas and New Year's 2025. It is a concept that I dream a lot about and that I invest a lot of time in envisioning. So it's important for me that I get the details straight and that the information that I'm sharing is correct. And if anyone else is interested in the same sort of topics, then please reach out. The world is a small place, and everyone we can get to know that dream about the same things. There is potential collaborations, potential partnerships to be done. So I'm always happy to sit down for a short call. It's been a blast, guys. As always, if you have anything that you want to ask me about, you can always DM on Instagram. But also, as I mentioned in the beginning of this episode, we are starting to use Spotify's own question function. So you can always, when the episode is published, you can go into the episode and ask questions directly there. So there is a lot to listen into. Thank you guys for watching. My name is Georg, and you have been listening to the Nomadic Business Insight.
Thank you for listening to LD Podcast. We are continuously looking for the most talented innovators. No matter your background or expertise, shoot us an email at high5@ld.studio with your skills and portfolio.